The next part of the project, yeah, we didn't forget about it. I always said I'd come back to this part. So this is the part we're coming back to now, is this front quarter panel. Do you remember this? Yeah, pretty ugly, isn't it? Okay. So next we're going to chop that off. I'm not going to do the whole thing. What I've decided to do was try and keep it a reasonable repair, rather than, if we get into the front, I'm going to end up repairing the whole of the front as well. It's already had the front changed by the looks of it. I've managed to uncover a weld here. So I'm going to cut it there and put a new panel here. And that'll get rid of all this horribleness here and close this bit up. Lovely. And hopefully that is the last of the welding on this side, and then we can seam seal everything up, paint everything, get the door back on it, wings on, wheels on, and get Lewis the car back together. So the first thing I noticed with our quarter panel, so I removed that. Ours has got the like a remote type flip out fuel flap. So there's a little lever that goes through here and a cable inside the car. This one, this is the only panel available. This does from 1968 onwards, but obviously not the Super Beetles. The difference is that this would have been like a pop open style and not necessarily the remote style. And also they noticed the filler neck was slightly different as well. This doesn't actually have the filler neck in it like this one did. So the easiest way to do it was to swap the two. So I spun it over, I drilled the spot welds out, and I managed to remove them quite easily. So with the spot welds drilled out, I've got this out and obviously I've cleaned it up. As you see, this has got the filler neck and the breather all built in. So this is the bit we need. The new panel, I did the same. I removed the spot welds, nice and steady. And out that bit came. As you see, it's got no filler neck. So this is for a different style, a different model, probably a different year. This is a 1970 Beetle. Then what we can do is magically pop this into here. I can plug weld it from behind. Obviously I've cut out for our little lever to come through to open the fuel flap as well. So we're all good. So that's that part solved. So with a little bit of welding, we're good to go with this panel. Then obviously all I need to do is work out where I'm going to cut the front off and what I'm going to do with that back edge. Okay, so we're ready for our final dry fit. Quite a lot of time and preparation has gone into this panel. Obviously I had to cut the nose off. As I said earlier, I didn't want to take the whole front quarter off because that would have taken us into the front panel, so we didn't want to do that. Also, I've drilled all the holes ready for our plug welding, and I've got our back lined up ready for our welding there as well. I've had to adjust the panel slightly. Most of the body panels won't fit straight away, so you will have to do some adjustments, some fettling, some tweaking, but that's just classic car parts, I'm afraid. That's how it is. Wasn't too bad with this, to be fair. It fitted quite well. There was a couple of little areas I had to tweak, but nothing too serious. So let's pop it on and I'll show you. I'm holding it in place with some screws, and you can use body clips or you can just use screws. I like to use small screws. And just double check everything lines up and everything is nice and close to the panel behind. So when we're doing our plug welding, we haven't got that massive air gap. If we need to adjust, we can. It's looking pretty good. There's a couple of little bits I'm going to tweak, but nothing too serious. There's a little gap here at the back, so I need to tweak the gap here on the panel. So I'm going to bring the panel up to close up against that panel, the upper panel gap there. Get that closed up. Here's pretty good. There's slight differences here, so I need to do some adjustment here, but that's fine. And then pretty much everything touches the back of the panel. So that's really cool. So our next thing will be obviously do my final adjustments, and then we can start welding. And we're going to plug weld all the welding along here, the same as we did with the floor pan. So it gives it some really good strength, and then obviously keeps it neat as well. We don't have to do any sort of continuous welding along the bottom there at all. So the only points of difficulty, I think, are probably going to be where it joins to the A-pillar. So the lip on the lower part of our A-pillar will actually fold round onto our quarter panel at the front here, and then I can obviously drill some small holes and weld through. Again, this would have been spot welded from factory all the way up. My only concerns are obviously this part here. Again, I've tried to clean this up best we can. I'm going to obviously drill through this and weld through onto the panel at the back. So I've got a bit of movement there, which is good. We should be able to, yeah, to get that absolutely perfect when welding. So I think that's probably the only hard point for me at the moment. The rest of it should be all fairly straightforward. I've tested with the bonnet down to make sure this follows the contour of the bonnet and doesn't splay out either way. So I think we're pretty much good to go. As I say, final little adjustments and get the welder out. So I'm going to get a tack on this side. So let's make sure that that panel is squished down. I've got a block of wood here. So let's get a tack on here. Again, I'm going through the panel onto the panel behind. And then a very small circular motion with the torch as I come out, and that now includes the panel. So that's our first tack. Nice and clean, really pleased with that actually, that's good. I'm going to do a few in this area and then I'm going to move and come down to here just to make sure everything stays in the same place. Last thing I want to do is keep going, create a load of heat and get stuff moving while I'm welding. So a bit there, a bit there, a bit there, helps to control the heat and stop warping the panel and hopefully keep everything in the same place. Oh, that is absolutely beautiful. Just need to have a look behind. I did clean all the paint and everything off behind where I'm welding, so we should minimise the amount of chance of actually having flames. We might have a bit of smoke, but that's fine. So I'll have a little peek, and we're all good. Excellent, yeah, on to clean metal. So I've got most of the plug welding finished. I haven't ground it off, but I've done the welding side of it. Next, I'm gonna get this bonnet line to line up. So what we had was, this is our original panel. And this is the panel, the new panel we've put on, and this is the original panel on the car. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of width difference. Whether this has been modified at some point, I don't know, possibly. But what I've got to do is obviously match it to our panel that we've put on. The easiest way to do that is I've run a slitting disc from the new panel right the way through the original panel, obviously a little bit further on the original panel. Reason being is that I'm now going to pull this across and get these edges to line up. I can put a spot of weld on here, then I'm going to use my slitting disc, use this cut that I've got as a guide, cut back to this here, and that'll give me a nice butt-to-butt join, and then we can weld that up. And that gets rid of that little problem. I've got the welder turned right down, and what I did was a little bit of practice on the bench. Let me show you. As you can see here, I started with the welder turned right down, and it didn't work. Obviously, there's not enough power to penetrate this piece of metal, so this is sort of a reasonably thinnish piece of metal. And we were just starting to get a bit more heat in as I was turning it up, and this is where I ended up. So again, it's turned down from what I was using before, because it's quite thin there, so I want to do some, I don't want as much heat and we don't need as much penetration because we're only going through one layer rather than putting two together. Yeah, so it's always worth practicing on a bit of scrap in your vise and get your welder set up before you jump on the car. Might be a little bit tricky. Again, I've got my welding gauntlet on, so I'm not going to burn myself. I'm just going to try and get a little tiny tack on here. Like so. What that's done, it's put that pretty much in line, and then I can adjust that with a hammer if need be. I'm going to try and get another little tack on here, and then we can cut through that line, get rid of the excess material, and weld it together, and you'd never know. And what I'm trying to do is get that profile the same. Obviously I can build up the weld here and grind that back. And then we're going to put the slitting disc through here and cut that excess piece of material off and weld it together. So I'm just going to line that up a bit more. That's the cutting bit done. Now I'm going to use my hammer and a block of wood underneath and just level those two pieces of material, then we can put weld through it. A little bit of excess material cut off. Obviously we're left with a little slit all the way through our new panel we've put on and our original panel. And I've ground a horrible tack down, and now we can do some nice weld and weld these together, and then I'll fill this with weld, grind it off flush, and hopefully it'll look as good as new. So that's that done, ground off, it's cool, I'm chuffed with that. It's welded on the outside and I've run a bead of weld down the inside and I'll need to grind that off as well and dress it all up before we seal it and paint it. Next is where the A-pillar meets the front quarter panel, and it's this edge here that's actually like a rolled seam and then spot welded through from factory. So I'm going to have to probably do a plug weld or a simulator like a spot weld, but a small plug weld all the way down. Obviously first I need to make sure that that's tapped right round, so I'm going to use a hammer and dolly and get that nice and flush. I'm going to use a little block of wood to put behind so I can tap against it. You can use like a metal dolly if you wish, but this is absolutely fine for what we want. I've obviously got quite a small hammer. I'm not going to hit it too hard and I'm not going to stretch the metal on the front is the idea. So we just tap away. This was the part of the job that I was sort of most dreading, to put the repair here, because this lip has already been repaired once and it's a little bit wiggly. So we're going to try and make it look really nice. Could be a bit of fun. So the lip on the new panel on the lower part of the A-pillar, I had to tap round with a bit of a heavier hammer. My little toffee hammer wasn't moving it. It's pretty thick compared to the old one up here. Anyway, I've got it beat flat. I'm quite pleased with that. And now all we need to do is drill through it and then do our plug welding. So I'm using quite a small drill bit. I think this is a 2.5 mil. And I'm going to drill through this one panel only, this one part of the flange. And then we can open that up with a slightly bigger drill bit and get a plug weld onto the new panel is the plan. Not an easy job. As I say, normally this would have been spot welded from factory. I'm probably going to go about 1 inch to 1.25 inches apart and do a few of the way down until we're finished. It'll be more than a few. It'll be quite a few. But let's get them drilled with the small drill and then we can open them up slightly larger. Probably 4 mil, I would think, something like that. And that would allow me to get a weld onto this panel. Let's get it on. This is the bit that I haven't really been looking forward to, but we've got to do it. I've drilled the holes through to enable me to be able to do a plug weld. It's going to be a very small plug weld, so I've turned the welder right down. Like I say, I want to try and get the wire through and weld onto this panel first and then bring the weld through and actually include the original part of the panel. Not easy. I've drilled sort of like a 4 mil hole for the minute. I might have to go up bigger. And I also need to manipulate the panel into position as well from behind. So it's going to be quite tricky. I'm going to try and put a bit of manipulation behind, get a spot on it, get it in place, and then I can weld the others down there. Let's just do it. Let's see what happens. So as you can see, I've got 2 tacks on. It's pretty good actually. I'm quite pleased with that. It went better than expected, but I've still got to do the rest yet. Ooh. Anyway, let's keep going. So I've managed to get 3 good tacks on. So I'm going to crack on and do the rest. Hopefully we'll be all right. Here we go. So I've got to try and go through the hole in the front and go straight onto the back of the panel at the back. Have I been putting it off? No, it's going to be a little bit tricky. I need to obviously emphasise the welding onto the new panel and try and include the original panel without obviously blowing holes through it and, you know, causing problems. Hence, again, while I've got the welder turned right down, I'm going to go nice and steady, some nice small welds and see how we go, and the same up through here. And then that's it complete. Then it's time to grind it all off. That's good. Although the welder's turned right down, we're still getting some really good penetration, as the metal's not particularly thick there, so that's all good. So again, I'm doing really short bursts to try and dissipate that heat, just to, you know, stop either panel distortion and or blowing through the panel. So I've finished grinding off the welds, just taking the tops off the plug welds and off the seam weld on the inside where I joined the panel at the front. Then applied some zinc spray, and as you can see, we've got some seam sealer. Now the seam sealer will actually seal off the welds because the welds are still quite porous actually. Then we're going to put paint over the top and then we can get the wing bolted on. And in between that, I've turned my back for 5 minutes and Lewis has been down here and painted the whole floor pan. Fair play, Lewis, it's a lovely job. Saves me a job though, look at that. So was he saying I wasn't quick enough? I don't know, maybe he was. Maybe he was hinting I won't get my car finished, Mark. So next I'm going to start putting pieces back into the car. Wow, make it look like a car again. So thank you very much for watching. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, and look out for the next episode where we'll be making it look like a car again.